Hello, today is lesson 3.3. We are just going to review graphing systems of inequalities. We are going to do it by hand and by calculator. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with number one. We are going to put this on the graph just as we would do a line, except it's an inequality. So in order to do that, we need to get y all by itself. So in this problem, I'm just going to go ahead and subtract 2 on both sides. When I do that, I get y is less than or equal to 1/2 x minus 2. So this becomes the y-intercept, so I'm going to put a point at -2. My slope is 1/2, so I'm going to go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, and then I like to go down and left, down and left, down and left. Now, what's different about graphing a line and graphing an inequality is we have to pay attention to whether or not there's an equal to. Because of this equal to, because it's a less than or equal to, we are going to make a solid line. If it was just a less than, we would do a dash because it can't be on that line. Because the y is on the left and it's a less than sign, we're going to shade underneath the line. If it would have been a greater than sign, we would shade above. Now, this only works when you have the y on the left. What you could also do is you can plug a test point in. You can plug in 0, 0. If I put 0 in for x and y, is 0 less than or equal to -2? No, it's not. So I wouldn't shade covering 0, 0. I would shade not covering it. Now let's go ahead and do the next equation. This one we have to add 3 to both sides. So we get 3y is less than -2x plus 3. And then we are going to divide everything by 3. So I get y is less than -2/3 x plus 1. So this is what I'm putting on the graph. I'm going to start at +1, and I'm going to go down 2, right 3. Down 2, right 3. Now because it's just a less than sign, we are going to make a dashed line. And again, it is less than, so I shade under the line. Now, I don't want to see all the shading all over the place. I want to see the shading where they intersect. So I want you to shade this part of the graph. So it's obvious that that is the solution to my system of inequalities. Now, I would like you to pause the video and try number 2 on your own. This one's a little bit easier because we already have y all by itself, but pay attention to whether you have solid or dashed lines and whether the shading is above or below each line, and of course where the intersection of the shading is. Okay, welcome back. What we're going to do in this problem is we are going to put this on our graphing calculator. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you a few tricks. It is very important that you follow along with me with your graphing calculator. All right, before I do that, I need y all by itself in all of these equations. So this first one, I'm going to go ahead and subtract x. So I get y is less than -x plus 5. This is one equation I'm going to put on my graphing calculator. This one, I'm going to subtract x again, so I get y is greater than -x minus 5. That's my second equation. This one, I'm going to subtract x, but when I do that, I get -y is less than -x plus 4. I can't have a -y, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply through by a -1. When I do that, all the signs change and the inequality flips. So I get y is greater than x minus 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this last one. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. And when I do that, I have to multiply through by a -1. And I get y is less than x plus 2. Okay, let's go ahead and go over to our graphing calculator. Now, let me show you what you need to do when you put all these equations in. You'll notice that you had an equal sign. So we want to make sure that we put the cursor over the equal sign, and we're going to use our alpha keys. So if I want a less than, I have to hit alpha window because that's my less than tab. Okay? So you want to make sure you change all the signs by doing alpha, and whichever one of these matches the tabs that popped up. So go ahead, take a minute to do that. Make sure for the negative x's you're using a negative sign, not a minus. And then go to graph. If your window looks crazy and it doesn't look like mine, please hit zoom 6. And then there's one more thing I want to show you. So if your graph is not looking like mine, please redo it by hitting zoom 6. Check to make sure you don't have any anything different in your signs. Now, Right now all I see is a big mess. I only want the intersection. So I'm going to go to alpha, either F1 or F2 because that's going to be my shades tab. And then I'm going to go down to number 1. I want the intersection of these inequalities. So it's just going to graph or shade the area that is the intersection of all 4 lines. See, a lot cleaner of a graph. Make sure if you have any questions or issues with your calculator, you write it on the questions, comments, or concerns section on the notes. Okay, back to the notes. Now we're going to work backwards. We're going to write the inequalities that form this system. Now in order to do this, we need to keep in mind our y equals mx plus b. Keep in mind that m stands for slope and b stands for y-intercept. I'm going to go ahead and do this first line. Now, I can see that the y-intercept is at +3, so I'm going to put a +3 in for b. I know I have x in there. I'm going to find 2 points that are pretty easy to see on my graph so I can find the slope. So it looks like the slope, I go down 1 and I go right 1. So that means I would have -1 over 1, which is -1, so negative x is fine. It's a dashed line, so I know there's no equal to, and it looks to me that the shading is underneath. So when the shading is underneath, it's a less than sign. So this is one of my inequalities. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the second example, or second line. So this looks like the y-intercept is at -2. Find 2 points. It looks like this is pretty easy to see in this one. So I go up 1, 2, so it would be +2, and right 1, 2, 3, right 3. This time the shading looks like it's above the graph, so it's going to be a greater than, and it's a solid line, so there would be an equal to. So these are my 2 inequalities that make that picture on the graph. Now I would like you to pause the video, try this next you-try problem on your own, and then if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this entire video, please write it on the bottom of the paper, and I'll see you tomorrow in class.